Welcome to episode 115 of Build Your House Yourself University by BYHYU. I'm your host and fellow student, Michelle Nelson, and together we'll learn the basics of home design and construction and demystify the building process so we can build quality dream homes with or without a general contractor. Juan Catano works in industrial construction and is currently remodeling his home. He and his wife are changing their duplex into a triplex, and recently they've taken on the role of general contractor. This week, you'll hear the first part of a two-part interview we did. He'll tell us about his experience so far and about some of their challenges. He also shares how he's finding and managing his subcontractors. Before we get into part one of the interview, I want to make sure you know that BYHYU.com has a search box where you can search for different topics and past episodes. The search box is at the top right of each post if you're accessing the website from your tablet or computer. If you're on your phone, though, you'll have to look for the search box all the way at the bottom of each post. So if you've been looking for a search box while you're on your phone, scroll all the way down. I also want to thank Boston Suburbs Homeowner for your 5-star rating and review. Thanks for taking the time to give me and potential listeners your feedback. I appreciate you. Now, let's get into our owner-builder interview with Juan Catano. Juan, welcome to the podcast. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us about your personal project?
Hi, Michelle. Thank you for having me on the podcast. I've been a fan of the podcast for quite a bit and really excited and honored to be here. So I work in construction. I work for industrial general contractor. We work in the water and wastewater treatment segment. We build treatment plants for private and public entities. And my personal project is me and my wife. We live in Oakland, California. We own a duplex that we're converting into a triplex. It's a 2-story house with a basement. The basement is going to become a 2-bedroom apartment. And the back portion of that unit that we're building is going to be storage and a laundry area for the tenants. The storage area is going to be for us. This project started back in September 2015, and as of today, we have hired and fired 3 general contractors. At this point, we're working with the 4th contractor at the time, and so it's been a little bit of a uphill battle and a lot of learning from this process.
Yeah, it sounds like it, Juan. But at this point, are you acting as the general contractor?
So what we've done since the last general contractor we hired, the project started with hiring a design build firm, which actually included the entire design and construction of the project. We terminated the contract with them. We have hired subcontractors at this point. We became owner builders into the eyes of the city. What we're doing is we have subcontractors with large packages of the scope of work, and they have subcontractors as well. So in the big scheme of things, we are the general contractor at this point. Okay.
And tell me how you are finding or getting the names of your subcontractors.
We have been reaching out to friends. My wife has a strong social network. We've been using a little bit of social media to reach out for recommendations from friends and acquaintances. And also we've been going to Yelp and Angie's List to find recommendations and reviews of the different trades and different subcontractors. Those being the main points of search we've been using.
And have you found that those reviews have been pretty accurate? I always wonder about that, like those reviews online, if they say that the subcontractor is good, have you found that that's true?
Yeah, I think when people take the time to put a review up, and I say it from personal experience, that really that contractor really made a positive impact into this person's project. So people are taking the time to do it. I think it's legitimate that they're giving them kudos and good reviews. When you have 2 or 3 reviews, I could feel that it could be like a relative or a friend or something. But when you're looking at contractors that have hundreds of reviews, or I don't think they're going to have someone posting like fake reviews. So I think they've been accurate, and with the people that we have interviewed, they have given us a sense of good professionalism and knowledge.
That's great to hear. Now, are you getting bids, or are you just hiring subs without a bid process? And if you are getting bids, can you describe that to us and tell us how long it's typically taking to get the bids back?
So with my wife, what we tried to establish was a system of evaluation, to put in some sort of term. But we want to get at least 3 bids so that we know that we have a good base of comparison in terms of pricing as well as scope of work. Depending on the complexity of the trade, we've been getting bids from a couple of days to a couple of weeks, or up to 3 weeks. And again, it's based on the complexity and the scale of the scope of work.
Okay. Now, how often are you at the job site?
I live on the job site.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So, the job site is our basement. So usually I get home from work after the workers have left. So I don't get to spend a lot of time with them. But whenever I make it home early, I try to interact with them and review the process. And usually on the weekend, I'll go down. One of the things we requested from the initial general contractors was to let us inspect the project and take photos and have access to the basement as often as we needed to, especially after hours. Because as you recommended at some point, documenting and having pictures so that we know how things were built. And I think it also gives them a little bit of a feel of that the owner is watching after them a little, so they try to have them not cut corners.
So is that typical? Do you usually have to ask permission? I guess I never thought that I would have to ask permission, but maybe it works in your favor to just communicate with them up front.
Yeah, what we were having is they were concerned about the safety of us walking to the site. In this project in particular, we had to replace the entire foundation. And I'm going to backtrack a little bit to the explanation of the project. So building the apartment, the basement had a low height, and it wouldn't meet the height requirement from the city code. So the height of the unit had to be increased. Initially, the plan was to lift the house, but it was going to exceed. They need to leave the house a couple of feet. It was going to exceed the maximum height requirement for the neighborhood. So they ended up switching gears, and they decided to dig. So by digging, the existing foundation was not deep enough to support the house properly. So we ended up having to replace the entire foundation of the house.
Wow.
Yeah. So with this, it also extended the contract duration, and contract amount also increased. So the house was being lifted. They shored the entire house. So one of their concern was us walking around where they have excavations that could, come down, or they were concerned about our safety. I think they legitimately were concerned about that, and the liability of having someone down there. So we had some conversations about that we just needed to be careful walking around. If there were nails or stuff on the ground, that we were not going to get hurt. So that's why we had that conversation about, and maybe not the right word would be permission, but making sure that access after hours was going to be safe.
Yeah, I understand that. That actually sounds like a smart idea. So you had to do a bunch of foundation work. or your contractors did, this doesn't sound like a project where you could do a lot of the labor yourself, but did you do any of the labor yourself, or are you doing any of the labor?
We're not doing a lot of the labor, the physical labor per se. Initially, we hired the design build firm to take care of everything. We just wanted to basically give our input and set our expectations of what the project was supposed to be. But the design builder was supposed to be in charge of everything. Now that we're becoming general contractors or owner builders, we're a lot more involved in the process. We're picking out the subs. We're actually now finding out that there are design issues. So we're participating in the design process. And with being an owner builder, general contractor, we're taking over all the management and the scheduling part of the process, as well as managing the budget. That's kind of inherited to being an owner. But now that we have multiple subs taking part of it, it requires to be even more involved, as you're not just writing one check, but you're writing multiple checks to different parties. So that's a little bit more involved.
Yeah. Now, what about inspections? Have you had any inspections yet? And if so, how did they go? And do you think that in general, inspectors give owner builders a little bit harder time?
Since we became owner builders, we haven't had any inspections. The prior contractor did the foundation inspections in the slab inspections, and the inspectors just have some few marks. But since then, my wife started to get in touch with the city inspector, because when we part ways with the prior contractor, there were some pending items that need to be addressed. One of the issues we were having was we need to obtain the borderline between the property line with the next door neighbor, just because we're adding a walkway to the side of the house, and we didn't have that addressed initially. The prior contractor didn't take care of that, so we started a conversation with the city inspector. They've been very helpful, giving us guidance or where to get information and what is required. So at this point, they seem to be taking it easy on us as owner builders. So to that extent, I think that's hopefully the case, because now we're on board on it. We should be getting our next framing and MEP inspection coming up in the next week or two. So I can probably give you some more feedback later on once that happens.
Okay. Well, it's encouraging that they have been helpful so far. Now, you used the term MEP. Juan, what does that mean?
So MEP stands for mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. That's usually a term that comes, it's probably more used in the industrial side.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if you hear that around, that's usually what it refers to.
Okay, so that's one of the big inspections that's coming up for you.
Yeah, and what we got, this was a recommendation from one of the subs, was to try to lump inspections as much as possible. So we could have had a framing inspection and then a plumbing inspection and then an electrical inspection. But what this sub had a large packet of the scope of work. They did the framing and the MEP. So what they recommended was, let's do an inspection of framing and the MEP all together, so that we can have one visit from the inspector and have as many checks or correction notices done at once, just to expedite the process.
Yeah, I like that idea. I've never heard of that, but that sounds like a smart idea. I guess you just need the buy-in from the inspectors. They have to say that that's okay.
Correct. And based on what he said that he's done in the past, it shouldn't be an issue, and we're hoping it's not going to be an issue. And everything at this point, it's all open. It's just we just have this point in the project, we're just terminating the gas plumbing, but we have the supplying line for the water supply. The electrical is completed, so it should be all visible. We actually just completed the HVAC as well. So we're trying to lump all of this together.
Wow. I'll be interested in hearing how that turns out, that sort of big, larger than usual inspection. So follow up with me.
Yeah, will do.
Now let's talk about subcontractors and managing subcontractors. I know you've had trouble with general contractors. It sounds like a lot of trouble, but what about trouble with subcontractors not showing up as scheduled or not completing their work? And if you did have those problems or have had them, how are you handling them?
Well, we've been lucky to have been working with subcontractors that they've been showing up on time. We've had a little bit of schedule slippage, but they've been showing will of wanting to work, and they've been having crews on site. And we understand there has been some issues that had come up. So luckily, it's been well in terms of showing up. We had subs that they haven't completed the entire scope of the work, or they haven't have completed the work not to our expectations. But we've been having conversations with them. What we've been trying to do is we withhold payment until they complete the task or finish it to the proper expectations. But I think the leverage that we have as owners at this point is payment.
Yes.
I think that's what we've been using it as a tool.
Yeah, I think that's smart. I think give them too much too soon and they're likely not to show up in the future. Yeah, so I think that's important. Now, you say that you withhold payment from them when their work is not up to your standard, but tell me about how often you pay them or plan to pay them.
So what we've done since the beginning of the bid process with the subs is they've been giving us breakdowns of the different stages. So especially with subs that have large scopes of work. So for example, the one I was just mentioning, that they have the framing and the MEP as part of their scope of work. They gave us a breakdown for the framing, for the electrical, for the gas, for the water supply. So with that we have scheduled values, and basically we provide payment on a completion basis or a progress payment. So that's also what we do while we go and inspect the progress of the construction. Is okay, electrical seems to be completed at 50%. With that, we know if this contractor is going to come or subcontractor is going to come and ask us for payment, we're aware that we cannot pay more than 50%. One thing that we've been doing is let them bill as needed, because for contractors and small subcontractors, cash flow it's a critical item to keep their business going. So we want to be paying them as much as possible. Because I think that also keeps them motivated to perform the work. If they are paid, they're gonna be happy.
Yeah.
So we pay them as they request payment. We don't have a set schedule, like time schedule. We tell them they can bill us on a weekly basis or bi-weekly, and leave it up to them to when to send us the bill. We're just making sure that we're not being overbilled, and we're paying for the work that is completed. One thing that we've done is we're trying to have a retention of 10% at the end of when they complete the tasks until inspections are passed by the city. Kind of to, again, give us that a little bit of leverage to have them complete the work, because they might consider it completed, but for us, completed is until it's approved by the city inspector.
So 10%, that seems so low. That's not, that seems low to me, but no, it's not.
It's a little bit low. we're just trying to work with them to try to keep the cash flow up. And I think that comes from my public works. In public works, the retention is 5% usually projects.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I figure if I double that, it might be enough. But yeah, you're right. It could be low, and especially in this projects and smaller residential projects in comparison to the industrial work I do. The margins are a lot lower. In residential construction, we have markups, between 15 and 30%. So you're right. Maybe 10% means that they're just not going to make as much profit. It might not be as strong of a lever.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about the materials. Like, I want to know if you're buying your own materials, and if you are you sourcing them locally or online? And if you're wherever you're buying them, are you getting a builder's discount?
So we've been doing a mix of purchases. We've been going to big box stores. We've been going to local specialty stores. We've been buying online as well. We've done most of the small materials and finishes. We've been purchasing ourselves, the ones that we can put in the back of our car, and small stuff that we can select up front. We've been having the subs pick up the material for us when it's large, like lumber or like a water heater, stuff that requires a pickup truck and more than one person to load them on a truck. And what we've been doing with them is they go and purchase the material and then just bring us their receipts, and we've been paying them. One of the arrangements we had at the point, we were offering them 15% markup of the material so that it would cover their pickup cost. What we've found out is that it could be 15% could be too much, or it could be too little. So, because if you have the sub running to get $100 part, he's gonna make $15 out of that, and he could have spent 3 hours chasing that part. And then if we buy a lot of lumber that is $3,000 or so, then he's going to be making a larger chunk of change for that purchase. So we've been doing also a mix with that. We started with some subs. We were purchasing the material ourselves, and then with other subs, we've been having them offer to include the material as part of their bid. And we've noticed, and they actually have mentioned to us, that they can give us better pricing by including the material, because they can sometimes, what their explanation from the sub was that they might have material that they can reuse from another project. So as an example of that, it's concrete forms. So they can bring the wood that was used for those concrete forms on the prior project, and then reuse them on our project. So with that, we've been testing both methods. And when we've been having the sub purchase the material themselves and bring us the bill, they've been getting the contractor's discount. They've been asking for it, and we're making sure that we're getting those good prices. Also, on some of the big box stores, they have loyalty programs, what you would call it. So we tell them to make sure to add our phone number, that is the phone number that is registered, so that we get the points.
Oh, okay.
For that. So that's another thing to take into account. The other thing that we've been doing with material purchases is we've been trying to use our credit cards mainly to get the points. We have some credit cards where we get miles or just points. So that's been good. One, to keep track of the payments, and then second, to get those extra points, because there's a lot of material and a lot of cost in material purchases, and I think it's worth getting that extra benefit.
Yeah, that's a smart idea. Well, that's the end of the first part of our interview. Thanks, Juan, for letting us learn from your experience. And thank you, BYHYU, for joining me this week. Come back next week for part 2 of the interview, where Juan tells us what he wishes he had have known before he started his project, what surprise costs he ran into, and what mistakes he would warn other owner-builders about. If you're an owner-builder that would like to be interviewed, or you know of an owner-builder who would like to share their experience on this podcast, email me at info@byhyu.com. That's info@byhyu.com. Please remember that the purpose of this podcast is simply to educate and inform. It's not a substitute for professional advice. The information that you hear is based only on the opinions, research, and experiences of my guests and myself. That information might be incomplete, it's subject to change, and it may not apply to your project. In addition, building codes and requirements vary from region to region, so always consult a professional about specific recommendations for your home.